Back on record at 10:18 a.m. Please continue.
So it sounds like through a lot of your time with LuLaRoe, your role has been a little bit amorphous. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to get a sense in how much you've interacted in at various areas with LuLaRoe. Let's start first with marketing. You said you didn't have a whole lot of involvement with marketing beyond sort of the overall sort of look of marketing pieces. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. What is the marketing group within LuLaRoe responsible for?
Objection form.
Marketing would, the responsibilities, as I know and understand today, would be to help promote the product of the company to consumers and to retailers. That's it.
And what is the product of the company?
Product of the company is the clothing.
And when you say to consumers, what do you mean?
Same thing. Market the product of the company, the clothing of the company, and where they can find clothing.
So you're, in that context, you were referring to consumers as the end users of the clothing?
Yes.
And you used the term, and I think I've used the term retailers so far this morning. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. What do you mean when you say retailers?
The independent fashion retailers.
At some point previously, they were also referred to as consultants, or fashion consultants. Is that correct?
I don't recall.
Do you have any involvement with the leadership development team?
Some.
Who's responsible for that team?
Kenny Brady.
What does that team do?
They provide training and coaching to independent retailers that have built teams in helping connect resources around sales and education, mindset training. They're responsible for the field trainings. Would be a high-level scope.
You referred to independent retailers who have built teams. What do you mean by that?
That I would refer to that as retailers that have decided to teach other entrepreneurs how to sell product to a consumer, and they've we would use the word recruit to be part of their sales organization, and an opportunity for them to teach and develop other entrepreneurs.
Is a retailer who recruits someone to be part of their organization also referred to as their sponsor?
Hold on a second. I think he's got.
Can you speak up, please, or raise
You
your
want me to raise it up?
Yes.
Yeah, let me raise it up for you. Is that better? Level good?
Thank you.
Okay. Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
again?
Is the
Sorry.
retailer who recruits someone to be part of their sales organization also referred to as their sponsor?
Yes.
Okay. And is someone's team also sometimes referred to as their downline?
I've heard that term before, yes.
What is your involvement with the leadership development team?
Objection form.
More just of a being informed of what activities they're engaged in, what projects they're working on. Somebody that might be asked to give input or insight, or to vet maybe an idea when they have something, but more than anything, a resource to Kenny as the strategic partner with him in just being aware of the projects that they're working on. Occasionally I'll get asked to teach something from stage.
What do you mean from stage?
If we have an event and they put together an agenda or a curriculum for that event, sometimes different team members will get asked to present on a topic. So.
You talked about your role sort of providing some coaching to some others in the team. Is Kenny one of the people you coach?
Yes.
What about the operations team? You said you worked on operations for a little bit when you first joined.
Mm-hmm.
Since you left that role, have you continued to work with the operations team at all?
No, not on a day-to-day basis. The only aspect of engagement I would have with them is as they report on their duties and projects that they're working on relative to the direction of Mark and Deanne as it plays out into the strategic plan.
You've mentioned a couple times the strategic plan. What is that?
Strategic plan would be a listing of projects and the tactical execution of those projects within the scope and responsibility of their individual domain within the company, and how that then parallels or coincides with the overall vision of the owners of the company. That plan would be something that's fluid, typically takes on smaller windows of time to assess against scope and vision as defined by Mark and Deanne.
Is it a written document?
No. Each team will present their own presentations and documentation of the things that they'll be working on in the upcoming quarters.
Present to the executive team?
Yes.
And what form do those presentations take?
They're varied. It's up to the presenter which form it'll take.
Are there sometimes presented through some sort of slides, like PowerPoint slides, or?
Yes.
Okay. Are they sometimes presented in other ways?
Verbally.
Any other ways?
No.
Are they presented on a regular basis or as needed?
It's just in its early stages of actually evolving and coming together, so this hasn't been something that's been done historically.
Okay. And I don't want you to, I'm not asking you to tell me about any conversations with any lawyers for LuLaRoe, but do you have any involvement with LuLaRoe's legal team?
Other than in the executive meetings and any requests that they might have, no.
And you described earlier the sort of compliance team. I think that's Austin Stidham's role.
Yes.
Do you have any involvement with him in that role?
Very little. Again, it would be if he has something that he's wanting to present to the executive team, he might ask how to get that on the agenda. He might ask a question every once in a while around how it fits in with the vision of the company, but not much.
who at the company, well, I think you may have said, so strike that. Is it also Austin Stidham who's responsible for the independent retailer compensation structure?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any involvement with planning for that?
Not with planning. Occasionally, question as to does this, again, does it help promote growth for the individual retailer? Does it strengthen their business would be a question that I might get asked every once in a while.
Have you been involved in communications with retailers regarding the compensation plan?
Possibly. I can't recall anything specific.
I think you said Guillermo Lopez is responsible for technology.
Yes.
Okay. How long has he been in that role?
I don't remember when Guillermo started with the company. I believe it would have been, if I were to guess, probably in 2016. May have actually, it may have been before. I don't remember.
Sure. If you don't remember,
I don't recall.
We're not looking for guesses, but if you have a reasonable basis for an estimate, council's entitled to your best estimate.
Yeah, I'll defer to that. I don't have any idea
Sure.
when he started. I'd have to really dig into my memory.
And since he's been in that role, what is he responsible for?
He's responsible for all of the technology internally for the employees and the organization and operations, and then he's also responsible for any outward-facing technologies that are a resource for the independent retailers.
And do you work with him on any of projects relating to those technologies?
No, other than just him reporting on the projects he's working on, I don't.
Okay.
He's also responsible for any interface technologies with third-party vendors.
What do you mean interface technologies with third-party vendors?
If there needs to be an API or a patch, say like our accounting software, if something needs to be implemented to connect with tax services or anything like that, it would be his responsibility.
Okay. Where's your office currently?
In Corona,
And what building?
in the Lakeshore building.
And what do you have in your office?
What do I have in my office?
Objection form.
Do you have a computer?
Yes.
Okay. A phone?
Yes.
Do you have paper files?
No.
You're lucky. Do you have an assistant?
I do not.
Do you use an email account?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a LuLaRoe email account?
Yes.
Do you ever use a personal email account for LuLaRoe business?
No.
Did you ever use a LuLaRoe email account before becoming an employee of LuLaRoe?
Did I ever use an email account before becoming an employee? What type of email
A
account?
LuLaRoe email account.
I don't recall.
Okay. Is anyone else authorized to use your LuLaRoe email account for you?
No.
Anyone else have the password?
I don't know that for sure.
Have you ever given anyone your password?
No.
Do you use, do you have a personal cell phone?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a LuLaRoe issued cell phone?
I do not.
Do you use your personal cell phone to text with anyone regarding LuLaRoe?
Yes.
Do you use iMessage while at LuLaRoe?
Possibly.
Do you ever use iMessage from your computer?
Yes.
Okay. Do you use any other chat features from your computer?
No.
When you work on LuLaRoe business on your computer, where do you store documents?
Objection form.
We have we have the G Suite for Google, so everything's kept on a corporate Google Drive.
Do you ever store documents on your laptop, or is it a laptop or a desktop?
Laptop.
Do you ever store documents on your laptop?
What type of documents?
Any type of LuLaRoe documents?
I don't believe so.
You said it's called the corporate G Suite?
It's just the Google Drive
Okay.
and Google services.
When you store documents in Google Drive, is there an organizational structure that you use, that the company uses?
Not per se.
Do you have a folder that's, for example, a folder just for you to save documents in?
I don't know the structure of that. It would be, I'm assuming it would be tied to my email account.
When you save documents to Google Drive, do you have any sort of method of organizing your own personal documents on Google Drive?
Objection form.
No, not necessarily.
Other than that Google Drive document, do you have access to any other shared drive that you store documents in your work for LuLaRoe?
No.
Do you use social media?
Yes.
And what social media do you use?
I have social media accounts with Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn.
And do you use Facebook for personal use or for use related to LuLaRoe?
Personal use.
What about Instagram?
Same.
Do you follow any independent fashion retailers on social media?
Yes.
Do you know which ones?
I don't.
Any particular ones come to mind?
I'd have to go back and look through, but I think it'd be a random sampling of retailers.
Do you follow Deanne on Instagram?
Yes.
Do you follow LuLaRoe Instagram and Facebook pages?
Yes.
Do you ever use Vimeo?
What was that?
Vimeo?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Do you use Periscope?
No, I had Periscope at one time, but I don't think I ever used it.
Do you use Zoom?
I'm familiar with the format. I've used Zoom in different meeting formats. We have a corporate Zoom account, and so if I've been invited to a Zoom call or been party to a call, I would have used Zoom in that capacity.
Do you have a personal Zoom account?
I do have a personal Zoom account.
Do you use it for LuLaRoe?
I do not.
Okay. Do you use YouTube?
I have a personal YouTube account, but nothing with LuLaRoe.
Do you use Twitter?
No, I don't believe. Yeah, I think I had an account one time. I don't even remember what it was. It would have been years ago, but I do not use Twitter.
Do you use TikTok?
No.
Do you use WhatsApp?
I don't know if I do or not. I'm not familiar with what that is.
Do you ever use the messaging services on Instagram or Facebook to communicate regarding LuLaRoe?
Not as a primary method of communication. Occasionally somebody might reach out and I try to get them back into email or phone conversation.
How do you usually communicate with others at LuLaRoe? Via email?
Objection form.
All different ways: phone, email, verbal.
How would you describe LuLaRoe's business?
I would describe LuLaRoe's business as a wholesale, retail opportunity for entrepreneurs to buy product, to sell product, and to develop community.
So under LuLaRoe's business model, LuLaRoe designs and manufactures the clothing, the product that you refer to, correct?
They design. LuLaRoe does not manufacture.
They outsource the manufacture.
Correct.
LuLaRoe doesn't sell to the end users of the clothing directly, correct?
Correct.
The independent retailers do that?
Yes.
Correct, okay.
That's correct.
So LuLaRoe sells clothing at wholesale price to those independent retailers?
Yes.
Okay. There's various ranks of independent retailers, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe that for me?
The ranks that I'm aware of are sponsor, trainer, coach, and mentor.
What is a sponsor?
Sponsor would be any independent fashion retailer that has signed another independent retailer up with responsibilities of teaching them how to sell product to a consumer.
Okay. What is a trainer?
A trainer would just be somebody that has, I would say, a larger sales organization that is performing at a certain level with their own personal sales as well as their team sales.
What about what's a coach?
It would be the same. It would just be expanded on trainer. It would be a larger organization with more sales and also more personal selling responsibilities.
And a mentor?
Same.
Same.
Yeah.
Larger than a coach?
Yeah.
Is there anyone at LuLaRoe who's responsible for communicating, particularly with mentors and coaches?
I don't think anybody has been given that sole responsibility, so I would say no.
Is there anyone who communicates with them more than other people at LuLaRoe?
It's hard for me to say if anybody. Deanne would be in probably more primary contact, and possibly Kenny.
Do you communicate regularly with mentors and coaches?
Not regularly.
Sometimes.
Yes.
In what capacity?
Depending on what the communication was, it might be directing them with a question where they might connect with somebody at the company. It could be questions in regards to coaching again and some of the skill set and capacity that I have. It might be questions about communication if they didn't get communication, or if they've got questions on something specific. It's usually directing them to a resource.
Do you provide coaching directly to individual retailers?
In what capacity?
Well, you said it might be in connection with coaching.
It would just be an outreach, nothing that's outside of the scope of the company.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting outside the scope, but sort of in what capacity, like, I understand sometimes you
Yeah.
talk to groups at, like you
Sure.
said, on stage.
Yeah.
Do you also do individual coaching with retailers?
Every once in a while, it might be somebody that calls with a question on how do I manage some of the drama on my team, or how can I show up as a better leader? How can I grow personally? And so it's, again, very, very broad, but it would just be the nature of their question and what they're asking for help with.
So over the years, retailers may reach out to you with questions or for help, and you may provide coaching as needed in that capacity?
Possibly.
Okay. Are there any retailers you recall providing coaching in that way for?
There's been a number.
Just any, you mentioned phone calls. Do you ever participate in sort of the larger planned phone calls with mentors or coaches?
Objection form.
Not currently, no.
Have you ever?
I have been on phone calls with mentors in the past. At least been a party to the call as a listener primarily.
Sometimes those calls were referred to as leadership calls, I think. Does that sound familiar?
We do have a leadership call that usually engages not just mentors, it usually is mentors, coaches, and trainers.
Have you participated in those calls in the past?
Occasionally I've been asked to take a presentation role.
Have you been asked to participate even if not presenting?
Just as a listener, yeah. Yeah.
How often are those calls?
I believe they're having them each week right now. Like I say, I'm not involved with them at present.
Were you more involved with them when you were in the communications capacity?
Nope, I haven't been involved in them for a while.
Does LuLaRoe have any expectations of coaches and mentors?
Objection form.
I don't know that there's any set expectations, to my knowledge.
Are mentors and coaches responsible for communicating LuLaRoe policies to their downlines?
No, they're not responsible for that.
They're responsible for communicating announcements?
No.
You mentioned earlier that a sponsor had a responsibility to educate the person that they're recruiting to come on. What did you mean by that?
I think they've made a commitment to that. I think there's an implied or an understanding that if you're going to bring somebody else into this business, that you take the responsibility to actually teach them the business. We have no interest in somebody recruiting for the sake of recruiting. It's not aligned with the business model at all.
So would that teaching include sales strategies?
Yeah.
How to host a pop-up boutique, that sort of thing?
Correct. That could be one of them, yeah.
How does LuLaRoe ensure that its overall message stays consistent through that education process from a sponsor to a recruit?
They don't.
Objection form.
There's not an insurance that is always the same because of the nature of the independent business owner. They have their own techniques, their own strategies, their own ideas of how to teach the business model.
So it's possible they have different messages from retail sponsor to sponsor?
Certainly. Yeah. We provide general resources, but much of the day-to-day interface with their own team member would be their responsibility.
What are those general resources?
I don't know all of them. I know that the sales and field development team have recorded trainings. I think one of their resources is called Threads, that talks about the business. I've been told it talks about the business. It talks about, gives ideas on sales and ways to communicate with others. I think it gives an idea of what the company is about, the work and effort that's required. I believe that, from what I've been told, the Threads series is primarily for new retailers to understand the business model, what it is and what it is not. And that's a resource and guide for some of these other ranked leaders, as you've indicated, that they can rely on to use as a teaching tool as well.
Where's Threads stored?
I don't know.
Are there any other resources the company has put together?
Trainings. Obviously, any event that the company holds always has training components to it. That's, of all the companies that I've worked with, LuLaRoe is very, very committed to bringing relative and relatable content and training to the retailers with the sole focus of helping them become better entrepreneurs.
So the trainings you're talking about are in-person trainings?
Yeah, in-person trainings. I know that they've provided video trainings in the past. They've provided phone call trainings. Zoom is something you mentioned earlier. That would be like a webinar style. I think they've provided written communication trainings. So, wide range. I know they've posted trainings to social platforms. They've redistributed trainings from other retailers. And so, again, it's a very robust effort to provide training tools and resources.
For those trainings you're talking about, the written communications, the video trainings, are they stored anywhere that a retailer who is looking for a resource can go look for?
Yes, it's my understanding that there's a repository of marketing assets and video assets as well.
What's that repository called?
I don't know.
Do you know what platform it's on?
I don't. From my understanding, it's changed platforms a few times.
Are those materials available exclusively for retailers, or are they accessible to the public?
To my knowledge, they're password protected. It would be for retailers only. But I also know that retailers have their own repositories or their own tools and resources that they make available to other retailers, and we don't have really any control or visibility on that.
So when a retailer creates their own tools or resources, is there a mechanism for that retailer to get those tools and resources approved by LuLaRoe?
Yes, they're asked to.
And what is that procedure?
I believe that there's a request for written permission when it comes to marketing materials.
How long has that request procedure been in place?
I don't know exact dates, but from what I understand, that's been around since before I came on. So,
Since before you came on as an employee?
yeah.
Who's responsible for that written procedure? What group?
The marketing group.
And it's your understanding that any time a retailer creates their own tool or resources for training or marketing, they need to fill out that written request and ask for approval?
I believe it's primarily with anything that would use the brand or logo in its representation.
So what if a retailer created a tool or resource that didn't have the brand but talked about how to run a LuLaRoe business, how to build a team, that sort of thing? Would that need to be approved?
Not necessarily.
Object is to form.
Not necessarily?
No.
What would it depend on anything?
I don't know what it would depend on. I would say if it's violative of the policies and procedures, it would be something that would be of concern for the company.
And I'm not asking about the compliance nature. I'm
Sure.
asking for the sort of a affirmative approval process. Would there be a process for that?
No, there's not a process for that to my knowledge.
Have you heard of the President's Council?
Yes.
And what was the President's Council?
To my knowledge, it was an assembly of early up-and-comers in the business that were chosen by Mark and Deanne to represent the field in the field's interests, objectives, challenges, needs. They were thought of as a liaison between between Mark and Deanne and the pulse of the field.
So you said early up-and-comers. Were you referring to independent retailers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did the members need to be a certain rank?
No.
And then you mentioned the field. Do you mean the field of all IFRs?
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose was to be a liaison between the field and Mark and Deanne?
Yes.
What sort of topics did the President's Council address?
It varied. It was usually the agendas were driven by the council.
When was it created?
I don't recall when it was created. It no longer exists, but I don't know when it was started. I believe that there were 3 councils, and they were an annual I don't know, assembly, if you will.
It's an annual term?
Yeah.
Did the council meet regularly?
Objection, form.
Not regularly, to my knowledge. I think that there was an intention to. I believe that they would meet in person at least once a year. And then I believe that they would have tried to communicate monthly.
Communicate via phone?
It could be any way. It could be phone, it could be email or webinar.
Did you ever attend the in-person President's Council meetings?
I attended a few.
Did you attend any phone calls between the President's Council members?
Not that I specifically recall.
Who else attended the in-person meetings besides the IFR members of the council?
Sure. Always Deanne. I would say on occasion Mark. Kenny and Justin. And I think that's it.
Did Jordan attend?
Not that I can recall.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked previously as Exhibit 161. record, this is Bates numbered LLR-WA 0002457. And I'll give you a moment to take a look.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you recognize the document?
I recognize the form, yes.
The form, it looks like it's an email from you to a variety of people dated September 5th, 2014. Does it appear to you that it's an email to you to the President's Council members?
Yes, it appears so.
And you're attaching minutes from the President's Council meeting that was held the day prior?
Appears so.
Was that a role that you were fulfilling at this time in terms of sort of organizing the agenda and meeting minutes for the President's Council?
Objection form.
It looks as though I was tasked with it for this specific meeting, but I don't recall outside of that meeting.
Okay. If you could turn to the page that ends in number 570.
Okay.
And there's a... You can put that aside. Even handouts been marked as 265. Which is base numbered LLR-WA000248892, and I'll give you a moment to take a look.
Okay.
Do you recognize the document?
I recognize the form, yes.
It appears to be an email from you to Mark at LuLaRoe.com. Is that Mark Stidham?
Yes.
Okay. Dated October 15th, 2014. And again, looking at the signature block of the email, it looks like during this time you were still working through Service Quest. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, you can put that one aside. I think we can take a quick break.
Hold the record at 11:18 a.m.
Thank you. I was starting to float for a minute.